Hello everyone and welcome. So in today's video I'll be talking about how you can use the 6 different types of conflict to shape your character's backstory. So what is conflict? Conflict with regards to storytelling is the opposing forces that motivate your character to act in some way. Now this force can be internal or external. Internal conflict comes from within. An example of this is when a person struggles with belief or expectation they have of themselves. For example, in The Godfather, Michael struggles between staying loyal to his family while trying to avoid getting sucked into their criminal activity. And it's his corruption from decorated war hero to cold calculated mob boss that makes him a tragic hero. Though one could also argue that it was his military training that set him apart from other crime families and helped him secure power, which adds even more complexity to his character. External conflict, on the other hand, is an outside force that causes some type of struggle or change in motivation. One obvious example is Darth Vader as a central antagonist or villain in Star Wars. For me, this tends to be the most obvious type of conflict and tends to be what drives the plot or game forward. However, to truly make compelling characters, you need to create both internal and external conflict. But how do you create conflict? To create conflict, you need antagonising forces. So in The Godfather example, the antagonising force is the guilt Michael feels for not supporting his family. This is what ushers him into the criminal world. I mean, Darth Vader I feel needs no explanation of how he is an antagonising force or supervillain. I mean, wanting control of the full galaxy and destroying anyone or anything who gets in the way is just one example. There are roughly 6 main types of, let's say, literary conflict we can use to bake into our Dungeons & Dragons games. The first is character versus self, and this is a type of internal conflict. An example of this could be a wizard who wants to change schools, but is afraid to do so because they'll be letting down their family. Perhaps their family divination wizards and advisors to a high-ranking noble family. Let's say our young wizard is being prepped to take over divining from their mother, but they don't necessarily agree with the noble's political leanings. Maybe they want to study transmutation and become a healer, instead of stoking political factions and war. But how will they do this? Do they run away, or study in secret? So in this example, we have an internal conflict with the self. A young wizard feels obliged to study divination, as they don't want to let their family down, but their values are not aligned with the noble they'll be serving. But we also have several external conflicts at play, such as the antagonist noble. The obstacles are branching out on their own. Will their family reject them, or worse still, does the decision put their loved ones in danger? The second type of conflict is character versus character. So this conflict can be simple or complex as you want to make it. In its most simplest form, perhaps a bard is singing in a pub to earn hopefully a few gold for their company, but a loud and leery orc starts to heckle them, and his heckling boils over into a fist fight. There's beer being thrown, tables being turned over, and the pub landlord is taking cover behind the bar. He was doing a favour for a friend and was told Monday lunchtimes are very quiet, so who can blame him? However, if we were to scale up this character versus character conflict, it's a blueprint for an ongoing power struggle and war between several factions, with each one vying for ultimate control of the realm. Of course, the in-between of both of these extremes would be a character trying to overcome some sort of nemesis. Maybe someone wronged their family a long time ago, and they want revenge. The third type of conflict is character versus nature. This type of conflict is my favourite. The first film that comes to mind when I think of this is Jaws. But other examples of conflict that fall into the nature category include wastelands, like those in Fallout. Little plug there to one of my most recent videos. There are also vast cave networks with no natural light, natural disasters, and even outer space. So if we were to run with this conflict in a Dungeons & Dragons game, one of our characters could be a druid whose forest is dying. As each day goes on, the trees begin to turn black and rot. They need to figure out the cause of this blight before it wipes out the entire forest. Is the source of the blight a curse, or is the forest infected with some type of superbug? This change or agitation in the environment sets up our druid on their adventure and propels them to leave their home for the first time. The fourth type of conflict is character versus technology. A common trope in films and books is when technology becomes sentient and begins to turn against its human creators. Some examples off the top of my head are The Terminator, Blade Runner, and of course Frankenstein. So if you use this type of conflict in Dungeons & Dragons, the Eberron setting would be ideal, as it's the most mechanical world. So perhaps we have an highly intelligent Warforged wizard who wants to study and understand the world around them a bit more. They want to fix everything, but unfortunately their skills are often taken advantage of. One day the loneliness gets too much. They want to find more like-minded folk who share the same values and principles. But if they don't find anyone, what happens? Do they grow dissatisfied and bitter from a lack of community? Or do they rise above it and embrace their uniqueness? The fifth type of conflict is character versus supernatural. Now I think this one is one of the more common types of conflict in Dungeons & Dragons, because most of the game has a supernatural leaning with magic. However, one way of taking the supernatural theme a bit further is thinking about the agency your character has in their world. Is their fate sealed by some bargain they made with the devil? Or are they trying to reclaim some free will by undoing the terms of the deal? Perhaps they've sworn some sort of fealty or service, and want to be done with it. But what would the consequence of this be? Thinking about the supernatural in this sense creates a bit of internal conflict too, as a character must have undergone some sort of personal change to want to break the deal. If you want to learn more about the game mechanics of how players make deals with devils, I found the appendix in A Descent into Avernus very useful. The sixth type of conflict is character versus society. So this type of conflict can occur on both small and large scales. For example, the family unit can be society as much as a vast governing body. So if our character wants to go against their family's expectations, this goes against society as much as wanting to disobey a tyrannical political system. This type of conflict typically includes more moral-leaning questions and puts a character in a position where the right thing to do never comes easy, or it has a high consequence. Another angle is that they maybe want to find happiness, and think that achieving some sort of lofty goal will fulfil them. Perhaps they want to be rich or respected, but what does this endless pursuit of wealth or power do to them? Are they corrupted by it? What cultural norms or expectations and values will they be willing to break to get what they want? Do they spend all their time in Candlekeep, poring over books and acquiring knowledge that can help their cause and weaken the current political system? But what happens when they stumble across a cursed book that can give them all the knowledge they need, but has a cost? What will they sacrifice to free their city from its tyrannical ruler? So now that we've gone over the 6 types of conflict, you'll probably notice some overlap between them. However, that's not a bad thing. All elements of conflict will naturally overlap, and none are ever mutually exclusive. Some just have more themes weighted in one direction more than another. I find using these 6 types of conflict very useful for generating backstory ideas, as it helps me hone in on a specific theme. You could even roll a d6 and choose a type of conflict based on the roll to start you off. For me, nature and technology conflicts are my favourite to write about, and I find them to be gateway sources of conflict. Society-based conflicts, on the other hand, I find much more difficult to start with. I think societal conflicts can be quite nuanced and abstract, in comparison with, say, a natural disaster, which can be more easily visualised. But let me know what you think and the types of conflict you gravitate towards when writing your games. I know it's very different for everyone. I'm intrigued to know what works well for you. That's all for today, folks, and I'll see you in the next one.